Hey, what's up you guys? Bloody Jacob here with another QMR video quick movie review set. And this time we got quite the odd combination to go over. And that includes World Trade Center, Whiteout, Out for a Kill, and Hard Night Falling.
My turn.
Jacob here, meeting my icon, Catherine Isabel here.
Bloody Jacob, your sexy, awesome, exclusive content. Get a part of this. Subscribe to the little butt down there.
Yeah, so weird combination here. I'm not gonna go on too long in this video. I am a bit sick right now. But these are just some movies that I had by my computer that I've been meaning to review, and I kind of just want to get done out of the way. Just not to insult the movies necessarily, just, well, not to insult a couple of them anyway. But yeah, I just gotta play a little bit of catch up here, and doing these, it's a bit easier to do it. So yeah, I'm probably only gonna go maybe 10 minutes here at most. But yeah, the first movie I wanted to talk about is World Trade Center, and this came out in 2006, and obviously stars Nicolas Cage, along with a pretty studded cast, to a good extent here. We have Maria Bello. There's also Michael Pena, Maggie Gyllenhaal, again playing Michael Pena's wife in the movie. And this, of course, is obviously based on the events of 9/11. And I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. I mean, I bought it. Granted, I bought it from a thrift store for about $2. So it'd have to be pretty terrible for me not to feel like it's worth that price. But this is actually a pretty good film for what it was going for, I thought. I mean, it's not... You see Nicolas Cage and you think, okay, this is going to be like a off-the-wall, weird Nicolas Cage movie. But no, he's pretty restrained in this movie. It's one of his more, kind of, believable performances, or at least one that he kind of played at a more grounded level anyway for himself. It's mainly about a group of port authority officers who end up being trapped when the disaster strikes. A couple two in particular, I won't spoil it if you haven't seen it, but for the majority of the movie, it's basically you see the two of them talking as they're trapped, trying to survive, and it sort of cuts their wives and families meanwhile sort of panicked by it all, and just desperate to find out what's happened to their husbands. So yeah, this movie only has a 5.9 on IMDb. And I really don't see how it's bad at all, really. I mean, from what I've read, they actually took the production seriously. They talked to the actual people, the actual officers that survived this event that they're basing the characters on, and got their seal of approval. I think some of them even went over the scripts and things like that to make sure how they're portraying themselves. Excuse me. I think there are some people who were involved with the event that actually attended some of the premieres and screenings and such. So they took it fairly seriously, and I will say it is a tad long. It's a little over 2 hours, but I think the movie did a good job. It's not overly Hollywoodized for the most part, at least in how it goes for the initial disaster. It's not shot in a big cinematic way necessarily. It's a pretty secluded or isolated type film, very focused on two certain men or so in particular that are being trapped, and sort of their failing psyche, with the position they're in and everything. And it's an exploration of grief and tragedy, and it's of course it cuts to different things going on, again, but it's mainly all with the family, and it's a very personal, very specific story, and I think it worked pretty well for the most part. Now, Michael Pena does a good job, but I feel like he's I don't want to say weak link. He did do a pretty good job. I wasn't sure of his casting at first, but then I would say my least favorite was probably Maggie Gyllenhaal. She just felt a little bit off if anyone did in the movie, but I think Maria Bello did a good job. John Bernthal even has a small role in this movie, one of my all-time favorite actors. This is before he was even in The Walking Dead, so he's not in it much, but it was still pretty fun to see him. Even Nick Damicki and everything, Steakland. But yeah, I like this one. It's not one of those movies that you'd watch often for obvious reasons, but I think it's one you should see. I think it's a respectable, solid, portrayal of the event on that day. And yeah, so next up we're going to be talking about really switching gears here in a big way, and that is Whiteout, which came out in 2009 and stars Kate Beckinsale. As a U.S. Marshal, she tracks people in Antarctica, and the sun is about to set for 6 months. Again, very different tones here. I like Kate Beckinsale. I'm a fan of hers. I absolutely love the Resident Evil movies. Or, excuse me, not the Resident Evil movies, the Underworld movies, personally. Just for me, I think at least Underworld put in some effort into their stories and history and lore and everything, whereas Resident Evil basically just made it a shoot 'em up and at the same time butchered some great source material. So I've always loved the Underworld films. Kate is Celine and everything. Van Helsing is the movie is one of my favorite movies since I was a kid at the time. And I'm meaning to see her in more as well, and this is my way of branching out. Thriller, killer on the loose sort of movie with this Arctic setting. I was definitely intrigued by. And I'm a sucker for these environmental type things. It can really give a great sense of isolation, and weather conditions can, you can see how it affects the characters, struggles and everything like that. It can really be a great tool. And it's fine here. I feel like it could have been utilized a bit more. And it's just funny how this movie was marketed. I mean, it's not very good. I'm just gonna say that if I didn't already. But I went back and watched one of the trailers for it, and it's marketed as like this really intense almost horror thriller movie. And it doesn't really do that much at all. I mean, you have a guy in like a big winter coat, covering his face with some kind of ski mask and goggles and such, and he has a pickaxe or something, and it's fine enough in those sequences. It's somewhat suspenseful, but it's not really a big mystery to make it a big mystery on who this killer is. It's think, oh yeah, it's that guy, but then they're probably going to twist it and have someone slightly unexpected, so it's got to be that guy, and then it kind of is. And they add a little bit to it, but it still feels very, very generic. It's really not much of a horror thriller movie besides those scenes sprinkled throughout. By the end, it really becomes more of like a action, kind of generic action thriller movie, and it's okay. I mean, I really like Kate Beckinsale, but I feel like she was a little weak here. I understand she can always channel like the strength of that she shows as Celine or something, but I feel like she could have had a little bit more conviction in the role than she did. She feels a bit sort of just not quite putting her all into the role, or I don't know. She's good with her emotions and her fear and everything like that, but I don't know, I feel like the character maybe it was just the direction for her, I don't know. But I feel like she required something a bit more headstrong, a bit of a more stubborn kind of forward personality. I don't know. I feel like that could have helped. And it was based like on a graphic novel or comic or something, so they could have utilized those things while still trying to keep it somewhat within the world. I don't know. But yeah, Whiteout was kind of disappointing for me. The rest of the acting is, pretty dull. The main actor who I think was in Suits, Gabriel Match, he was somewhat likable, but the character again, it's just really dull writing. Pretty generic. Yeah, a little let down by this one, but I only got her a few bucks as well, and I do like Kate Beckinsale, so it is what it is. I'm hoping, I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the other stuff. Let's just leave it at that. Next up, we're going to be talking about Hard Night Falling. Now, this movie actually just came out in 2019 and stars Dolph Lundgren, one of the greatest action stars of all time and one of my all-time favorites, just behind guys like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Dolph, legitimately one of the, as far as I know, one of the best guys behind the scenes that's ever worked in the genre. I love a lot of his films. Sometimes he's neck and neck with Van Damme for me. So I was looking forward to any new release either of them have, and Hard Night Falling was a pretty big one for me. Or, well, at least I was at least looking forward to it quite a bit. Excuse me. And basically it's sort of a Die Hard type of scenario. I mean, the IMDb, sum up is, after an Interpol operation in Italy, Michael attends a company dinner party when suddenly the 50 guests are held hostage by 15 to 20 armed men for the $1,500 million there. And so, yeah, he has to call in his team that he usually works with, and go off and figure out the operation, pick people off as they have to, while trying to make sure his family's alright. Yeah, there's so many action movies like this, and it was pretty typical, unfortunately. I mean, I think Dolph is good, at least solid acting-wise. It's hard for me to really bash anything of his too much. But it just felt very familiar. There's just a lot of tropes about it. The action isn't really much to write home about. There's a couple of physical scenes with him, but it's kind of cut together weird. I'm sure the stunt was a bit mixed. I will say, probably the biggest compliment I can give the movie is Natalie Byrne, who actually gets her hands in on more of the action than Dolph Lundgren actually does in this movie. They also did Acceleration together recently as well, which I haven't seen yet. But I thought she was surprisingly believable in the role, both physically and from an acting standpoint. She almost ended up sort of becoming more of a protagonist than he was. So I did like her, but the villains are generic as hell, and there's nothing really memorable about any of the action or fights in it at all. Just, excluding Natalie Byrne's surprising amount of prowess and just comfortability in what she's doing. But other than that, not really anything exciting or memorable in it. So it kind of just becomes a bit forgettable for me, and if it wasn't for Dolph Lundgren and me liking Natalie Byrne in the movie, I'd probably put it below Whiteout, so if that says anything. I thought the premise could have used more intensity. I've seen how many movies do this that were a bit better. So a bit of a letdown for me again. And last and probably least is Out for a Kill, starring Steven Seagal. This came out in 2003 and one of his many slew of direct-to-video titles in the 2000s. An unsuspecting university professor is unwitting accomplice in a foiled Chinese cocaine deal. Wrongly imprisoned, he escapes to take his revenge and prove his innocence. So yeah, Steven Seagal is a professor in this movie, but yeah, he's also an Aikido master, of course, as usual, and has some kind of CIA-type background too, because, Steven Seagal. And it's kind of with a lot of action movies, but so many Steven Seagal movies are just cut and paste. With almost every Van Damme movie, yes, even his 2000s films, there's always something distinct about each Van Damme movie, or a little something different about his character, or the story and the scope of it, I don't know. Well, Seagal, it's, you've seen one, you've seen most of them. This movie is okay. I mean, it had Michelle Gao in it. and she narrates just what a mysterious man Professor Robert Burns is, and she tries to analyze his psyche through the really kind of just clunky script. It doesn't work. Doesn't really add any mystique to him. It's just Steven Seagal walking around slowly, not, basically being an invincible god. He fights this, crazy psychotic medical guy, and he runs on walls and such, and Seagal, just all of a sudden bests him, and again, there's no challenge for Seagal in this movie, no suspense with any of his fights, none of the fights are really that dynamic, they're cut to shit. That's basically what you get here. And yet I say all that, and it's still not the worst of his 2000s films that I've seen. It's not, I don't know if I want to say Belly of the Beast was good, but it's not quite as entertaining as Belly of the Beast was for what it was. But it's also not as bad as something like Submerged or Mercenary for Justice or something like that. It's just within there somewhere. You had Tommy Woo, who's been in a few different things in the genre. But besides that, there's a couple smirk-worthy lines from Seagal once in a blue moon where he shows a smidgen of personality. But besides that, it's pretty typical Seagal schlock, really. And yet I bash Seagal in all these videos, and I keep watching his films, and I don't know what the hell's wrong with me, guys. But yeah, definitely my least favorite of this video, if you couldn't tell. So yeah, if I had to rate World Trade Center, I feel like I'd give it at least an 85-86%, somewhere in there. I'd give Whiteout maybe a 70-72 at most, D+ at lowest, or maybe like a 66, I don't know, it just depends on how far I am in my dislike of the film at the time, I don't know. Hard Night Falling, probably about the same, honestly. Out for a Kill, oh god, probably like a D minus at best, I don't know, who fucking knows. Anyway, let me know you guys thought about each of these films. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace. I know I went over the time I said, but that's how it be.